Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to our Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. And first of all, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas if you celebrated, and otherwise just a happy holiday season. I hope you guys have a great time off from the market and just spend some nice time relaxing with your family and seeing friends as well. So everybody stay safe and enjoy yourself. With that said, let's dive into this video, and as always, we'll talk about the market indexes, leading stocks, my watch list, how it performed over this past week. I'll talk about a few different sources of sentiment, the IBD Big Picture article, and finally the Wishing Wealth GMI signal. And over the course of the past week, the conditions have really changed sharply. It's kind of what I've said in the past. You always want to do your homework and be ready because setups and all of that can really shape up in just a few days. And that's really what happened this past week. As you see from the NASDAQ here, we had a nice upside reversal on the 20th, a really nice fall through on the 21st, and then even more fall through into the end of the week, breaking the 50-day moving average, getting back up above this downward trend line, and pretty much just starting a new uptrend in the market. So that's why you always want to be ready and have those potential leaders identified. So those are the first that you go to kind of test the waters and see if positions stick. And last week was kind of the first instance where test positions in MU and other names really took hold and gave me that cushion to hold it comfortably. So for me, the conditions have really changed. Right now, my view is we are back into another uptrend. And obviously that doesn't mean that you completely ignore risk, but you can start getting back exposure, focusing on those best of the best ideas that are coming up the right-hand side of new potential bases or breaking out into new all-time highs. So we'll talk through a few of the setups I'm watching later on this video, but just so you know, right off the bat, my view is that the uptrend has resumed. And overall, we're back above these key moving averages. As I mentioned, we're back above this DTL, and things are looking pretty good from an index point of view, but we'll have to see if that sticks next week, or if we do undercut these lows, undercut the moving averages, and just kind of roll over, that would cause kind of my perception of the market to change. And as well as that, you want to listen to feedback from your own trading. Are you making progress in your account, or are you still getting chopped up? That should factor into everything and kind of your view of the market. With that said, the NASDAQ looks pretty good, back above those key moving averages. Looking at the S&P 500, this is pretty similar here. And you can see that this is actually much stronger. We didn't undercut these lows. So actually the fall through day here is still relevant. So we never undercut this lows, which we did on the NASDAQ. Just going back quickly to that chart to point that out. This reset the rally attempt number on the NASDAQ, but the S&P 500 stayed a little bit stronger and is right back into all-time highs. Once again, pretty bullish, back above the moving averages, and looks pretty good. Looking at the IWO, this kind of gives you a sense of growth stocks. And once again, we're kind of rallying off this kind of mini double bottom pattern here, and we're showing a lot of strength into the end of the week, back above the rising 21 EMA. And if you draw an anchor view app, I think we're just below it as of this point, but I'd love to see us kind of consolidate below 300 and then pop through that, get back above these moving averages as well, the 50-day, as well as the 200 SMA. Looking at small caps in general, not just small cap growth, this looks pretty similar and almost identical. And this one as well, I want to see if we can kind of push through these moving averages. That would be a great sign for small caps and usually the growth space in general. Looking at the FFTY, the Innovator IB50 ETF, this gives you another sense of how these type of stocks are performing. Once again, a super strong rally off the bottom here, still below a declining 21 EMA, so we have to get through that barrier, but we'll have to see how this progresses. Once again, we had a nice undercut of these lows and a strong rally, although on lower volume. And that is one thing to remember. The past few sessions, the past week or so, has been on relatively low volume. And that's kind of because we're moving into the end of the year. So I'll have to see kind of how this rally performs into the new year and see if it really sticks. So keep that in mind as well. But I'd love to see this index get back above that 21 EMA and start to move up strongly up the right-hand side. So with that said, let's take a look at a few names that I think are pretty key. First up, we've got MU, which had a strong earnings gap up out of the handle of this longer term cup with handle, just below all-time highs here. And it made nice progress on this day, nice inside day with a good closing range on Thursday, or actually Wednesday, and then really nice progression on the 23rd on that Thursday, making its way towards these all-time highs. So I'd love to see this fall through. I do have a position as of this time. I bought on this first day, and looks like a strong push through 90 and pretty much textbook action. Some other relevant names, of course, we have to talk about Tesla, not necessarily leading in terms of being at all-time highs and breaking out, but this kind of gives you a good sense of the risk appetite of institutions. And in that sense, it's kind of the leader. If growth stocks are doing well, this is going to do well as well. We had an undercut and rally of these levels, and it just barely filled this gap and is right now forming a stage 3 consolidation. And basically you have a nice push here back through the 50 SMA, back through the 1000 level, and looks pretty strong. I'd love to see it break this DTL, but some consolidation right at this level I think would be normal. And then I would love to see it just kind of burst through. So maybe a few days inside or just going sideways pretty much. And then if you don't have a position already, you can manage risk right at that swing low. Other names to watch, of course, Apple. As this goes, a lot of the big indexes are going to go as well, and this has continued to show nice relative strength, holding that 21 EMA. You do have some downside reversals here, but so far acting pretty well. This rally up is a little bit on lower volume, but as I said, volume in general has been low. So maybe we kind of pull back a little bit, form a little bit of a shelf here, form a DTL, and then we can break out and start to trend. I think that would be great for the overall indexes. And before we go over to TC2000, I did also want to bring up the charts of AEHR, which I think is forming a nice base, pushing up the right-hand side. I'd love to see this kind of go sideways, form a little bit of a handle near 20, then burst up and make its way towards all-time highs. But I like the look of this base. Not too much high volume on the selling, and it really got tight down here right at a kind of confluence point near this prior consolidation after an earnings gap up. So definitely want to watch going forward up the right-hand side. Also, app has a similar look to it. So all of these are kind of trying to form the right-hand sides. And I think if they can continue to build over the course of the next few weeks, that'll be very bullish for leaders in general. So my kind of views on the market have really shifted based on the changes in price action. And there's just a lot more setups and developments that are pretty constructive to my eye. So with that, let's move on to TC2000 and take a look at some more leaders. So first, going to this list, Tesla, we already talked about, nice undercut and rally. Let me open this up a little bit more so we can see the charts. Nice push up here, nice volume coming in as well. You had an outside day kind of starting this move here after it filled this gap just below 900. AMBA, let's move on over to that chart right here, back above the 50 SMA, still kind of within a base here, but you've got a DTL here that you can draw connecting these highs pretty much. MU, we already talked about, nice push up here and acting really well, and good volume as well coming into this name as it tries to make a push up the right-hand side of this base. ON, another semi, acting well into new all-time high ground, looks like right here, and above a rising 10 and 21 EMA. And at this point, you definitely want to be focusing on stocks that are up their right-hand sides above a 50 SMA, and ideally above the shorter-term moving averages and close to those all-time highs. BLDR trending nicely above the 21 EMA, looks pretty good. MXL also above those two key moving averages. NVIDIA not quite as strong as some of the other semi names, so that's interesting, but it has come quite a long way, so it could just be building out a base, but it's back above the 10-day, maybe just above the 21 EMA as of this point, and nice push and support found right at the 50 SMA, and also if you go to a weekly chart, the 10-week moving average. AMD a little bit stronger than NVIDIA, broke that DTL, then continued to base here, and you've got pivot right at this level around 147. That high is at 147.93. Wasn't quite able to push through that on this Thursday, so watch for that in the coming days and weeks. LRCX also holding that 21 EMA, looks decent. MRVL also a nice push, nice gap up after earnings, it looks like, on the highest volume in the past 250 days. So definitely want to watch as it continues to build out. You've got a pivot right at basically 90 here. SIMO also acting well along with PSTG and also MU. Qualcomm also lagging a little bit like NVIDIA, but holding up well within the structure, forming a higher low. INTU not really leading. I'll probably take this off the list right here. F building out here, still one to watch and acted well last week after this upside reversal. CEN acting well after this gap up on earnings. And lastly, we've got POBM, which isn't necessarily a leader. It's still kind of basing here, but it is getting very tight at these levels, and definitely want to watch through the 200 SMA sometime next week. And with that said, let me know any stocks I should add to this list, especially if it's a newer name that hasn't really been talked about or just one outside the tech space. I am looking for suggestions to add to this list, so let me know down below in the comments section. Next up, let's talk about the previous leader, just run through their charts, look at how they're developing. AHR acting well up the right-hand side, as we already talked about. Great volume coming in as well. Apps also moving up the right-hand side, found support right at this anchor view app from the March lows, but this still could just be within a longer-term basing pattern. It's pretty much basically gone nowhere below 100 for almost a year at this point. but it is very constructive that's back above these moving averages. And drawing an anchor view up from this point, which I think is significant, looks like it's just above it as of this level, so you definitely want to see this turn into support, and you don't want to see it roll over and fall back to the bottom of this base. Mara push off the bottom here, but still early on in its base building mode. Hut very similar, but did have a wedge pop here on this Thursday on decent volume, so watch this up the right hand side in the coming days and weeks. SI is very similar, back above the 10-day, still below a declining 21 EMA, and you do have a lot of overhead supply, some volume up at these levels. T moving out the right hand side looks decent, so it's forming a pivot right basically at 390. It wasn't able to push through on that Wednesday, but a nice inside day, quiet day on very low volume to end out last week, and a really nice push up off the bottom here on the 21st. DOCN still basing here, but you can see that you've got a pivot right at these levels. Definitely could burst through and start a move up the right hand side, and I do want to see it get back above the declining 21 EMA as well as the anchor VWAP. You can see how that was resistance here and here. So definitely on your charts, if you've got the anchor VWAP tool, put that at the top of the base, and you definitely want to see stocks kind of base below it, then pop through it and get back above that. That suggests that kind of the buyers are stepping back into control after this basing process. LC still a little bit worse. It did find support at the 200-day moving average, but it's kind of stuck below a declining 10 and 21 EMA. And you can see there's a lot of overhead supply if we put that at the top of the base. And even back here, there's a lot of overhead supply. So definitely want to see a push through here and getting it back above the 21 EMA and the other key moving averages. Coin, nice push late last week, and definitely a wedge pop through this pivot. So I definitely want to see it get back above the 21 EMA as well as the IPO anchored VWAP here. Burrow's also making a push up the right hand side, wedge pop on this Thursday, and you've got resistance right at that IPO anchored VWAP. So definitely also for the newer issues, keep this anchored VWAP on your charts. SPT still looks like it's in a downtrend. You can see what I'm looking at here. It's below a declining 21 EMA, but is finding support near that 200-day moving average. Moving on to S, you can see it's starting to push off the bottom here, basically very choppy as it found support here near this prior consolidation level 46, and it's back above 50, and nice upside reversal action on this Thursday. UPST still in a downtrend, not much to say here. I think this needs a little bit more time, although it is forming a constructed pattern in the short term, so maybe get a push up here through these anchor VWAPs, and I definitely want to see it get out of this downtrend, get back above a rising 21 EMA. DDOG holding up really well. Definitely want to watch next week through these levels. 182. Task moving up the right hand side looks decent. Net still looks like it's in a downtrend below a declining 10 EMA and 21 EMA as well, but maybe the start of a bottoming process here. Oops reversal and then constructive action the rest of last week. Skin moving up the right hand side, still below a declining 21 EMA. TDD looks pretty good. You've got a significant level right at 98 or so. You can see that's the top of the prior base, so definitely want to see a breakout through that point, and really nice action late last week. Oops reversal on the 17th, inside day, and then continued kind of confirmation of a potential start of a new uptrend back above a rising 21 EMA. In mode also looks like it's forming a little bit of a U shape here, looks pretty good. Unity looks like it needs a little bit more time below a declining 21 EMA. Bill also below a declining 21 EMA. You can see a lot of these patterns are very similar, and basically the ones I'm focusing on are the ones with the least amount of distribution on the left hand side, and the ones that are more U-shaped and also earlier on within their life cycle. So one like Bros is more of a focus for me just because it's such a recent IPO and has a little bit more potential and didn't have that 300% run that many of these had in 2020 through 2021. So getting back on track, let's look at ASAN, which did have a lot of distribution on the left-hand side, but also if you draw a line right at that high volume close, it pretty much held that and never really closed below it except for just a few times and never really undercut it, and it's back to respecting the 200-day moving average. So watch for a push through this 82 level, 83 level, and the start of a potential right side of a base. Zscaler back above the 21 EMA here, and is back above this anchor VWAP as well. You do see some distribution on the left-hand side, but so far, computer software security, FT&T, PanW, that group has been reasonably strong and has fared a little bit better than the rest of the software names. SE still in a downtrend, doesn't look great, although you do have a potential bottom forming here, but still has to get back above a declining 10-day as well as 21 EMA before I would really consider this name. AMD moving up the right hand side, we've already talked about it. AFRM just in a downtrend, but constructive action the past week or so. Domo potentially forming out a U here, but once again, very high distribution, although it is holding this high volume close and kind of respecting that level. Dash could be forming out a U, but it is below a 200-day moving average. Crowd looks like it's bottoming here. You had basically a reversal extension, and now it's just going sideways, and you're waiting on the wedge pop through this 213 level. Netflix looks like it's basing here and definitely shaping up pretty well. EMPH also forming a base, found support near the 200-day moving average, filled this gap. Not really in my focus because it's below a declining 10 EMA and 21 EMA, so it has to get back above those levels and really develop this base a little bit more. Roku also in a longer term downtrend, so it's not really a focus, but it is acting constructively over the past 2 weeks or so. And I definitely want to see it get back above 238 and get back above a rising 50-day moving average. When this moving average shifts to support, that's when I think this stock could be potential actionable for a position trade. But in general, this isn't really a focus because of the amount of distribution and kind of lack of support during this downtrend, and how it's just basically in a longer term downtrend on a weekly. And also there are many just kind of better opportunities out there that are near all-time highs, shaping up well, and haven't kind of had the run Roku already had during this time. So I'm kind of focusing on new merchandise versus these old beaten down names. Peloton also a similar boat within a downtrend, especially with the gap down and just kind of leak below that. Not really on my radar as of this moment. So overall, that's a quick run through of kind of the previous leaders. Let me know your thoughts on these charts down below in the comment section. Many of them are kind of shaping up the bottoms of potential bases, but they might just not be a focus of mine because I think there are better opportunities out there in the market. Some of them, Peloton, Roku, are longer term downtrends, not really a focus of mine. And in general, I'm kind of focusing on AHR, Bros, which are kind of shaping up well and haven't had that kind of huge run and already exhaustion move, almost like an SC, a Peloton, Roku back in 2020. So let me know your thoughts down below. And now let's move on to my previous watch list and sort by that weekly change and go through the charts that we haven't already talked about. So MEU we already discussed, acting well after this gap up on earnings. Bros as well we discussed. It's got to get back above that anchor VWAP from the IPO date. App shaping up well, nice support near the IPO anchor VWAP, and also if you draw one right at this level, you can see where the stock found kind of logical support. And I would love to see it just kind of go sideways for a few days, form a pivot right at kind of 95 or so. PDFS acting well as well. A little bit of a double bottom action, finding support near the 50-day, 10-week. Looks pretty good after this gap up here. FTNT holding up well, and you had a nice pivot right near 340. PSTG tried to break out here on this Thursday, but it couldn't quite hold. I think MEU and SIMO are better names within the space. GFS not really going anywhere, but is holding up above the anchor VWAP from the IPO. I think this level is very, very relevant. SIMO also acting well, breaking out into new closing and relative strength all-time highs. SLab also acting well, just going sideways. You've got a wedge pop through kind of 207 here. SWCH breaking out into all-time highs through this base, looks pretty good. CCMP just going sideways after the gap up on earnings on very high volume. CN just kind of trending higher. And lastly, Donut, pretty choppy in here, not really a focus of mine, but it did have a nice push on this Thursday, 2-2 reversal after it found support at the 21 EMA. So that's a quick run through of my previous watch list, and make sure you guys tune in tomorrow on Sunday when I'll be posting my next list of ideas, and let me know if you acted on any of these last week. Moving on to sentiment, we saw a big spike in the sentiment survey from 41.3% bullish, now 60.3%. This is pretty high, but I think that's pretty understandable given the overall market action last week. Looking at the name exposure poll, this is increasing once again, but still pretty low at 67. And we definitely saw it get pretty low down at 52 as the market was pulling back. So this is pretty promising. I definitely want to see this kind of stay low over the course of the next few weeks. That would be very promising as kind of things kind of build out a little bit more. So with that said, let's move on to the put-call ratio. This is declining once again, but we did have that spike up to 1, which is good. And the bulls versus bears poll is still pretty low, which once again is a good sign. So overall, in terms of sentiment, things are spiking a little bit late last week, but still nothing extremely bullish just yet. Moving on to the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is Stock Market Rises Again as Signals Turn Positive, Santa Claus Rally on Deck. Overall, they talk about the Christmas week rally, how the S&P 500 continued to make a new closing high, overall positive action in the market indexes, and also discuss their change in their stock market outlook, which is once again uptrend resumes, and discuss kind of the history of the Santa Claus rally. Lastly, they talk about a few names down here that aren't kind of traditional tech stocks, and this name ICLR is actually one I'm about to add to that leaders list. So overall, their current view is uptrend resumes, one distribution day on the S&P 500, leaders up in volume and leaders down in volume as well. Lastly, we've got the wishing well GMI signal, which is still green since December 13th, but we were in a QQQ short-term downtrend, which could end on Thursday. I believe it did. And overall on Wednesday, the GMI score was a 2 out of 6. But overall, Dr. Wish does mention we just had a green dot on this day. So overall, things are shaping up really well. I'm seeing a lot more positive action, bases being built. And once again, my view, as I mentioned, is kind of an uptrend resumes in the market. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Have a great rest of your holiday week, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.